1. I think it's commonly agreed that most travel agent websites are a nightmare to deal with, between bookings not pulling through or VCCs not working properly, or them advertising rooms that the hotel just doesn't have. Yet this bane comes double for those of us who lurk in hotels at night keeping guard patrolling the corridors. If it's not their reps ringing us at 4 a.m. while we're doing paperwork to ask us to check a booking that they should have all the information for, then it's the problem I so commonly deal with. And in part, it's not even the booking website's fault. It's a request I beg all guests to heed, one that will save you, me, and everyone else a lot of headaches. Stop booking hotels after midnight on these websites. If midnight has tolled, please ring the hotel directly to confirm availability. The issue with booking online without contacting the hotel first is these websites have no concept of what business day my system is on. I was faced with this very situation recently. The midnight bells had rung. Bong, bong, bong. Every guest was checked in. The doors were locked. The paperwork was filled. And more importantly, every hotel room in the building was booked. It was perfect, and so I hit the night audit button and set the system off on transferring us to a new business day. An hour later, I'm sat back with some food knowing I'm way ahead of the schedule when the doorbell chimes, as it always does when food touches my lips. So I stand, welcoming in the guests, and request, as I always do, their room numbers. Yet they don't have room numbers, they have a booking, though. They're here to check in. Which makes no sense, as I had confirmed all bookings were checked in before running the audit. Then, from their pocket, they produce their phone, with the email with the signature blue banner of pain and suffering to every hotel worker across the world. Yet I find myself at least a little thankful as I see the words "pay on arrival," and just this once I'm blessed. An hour I spent with these guests explaining to them that I didn't have room for them, and that their booking was due to arrive at 3 p.m. that day. Yet, over and over they showed me their email, as if it might summon a construction crew to build them a room. Yet despite their bludgeoning of every inch of joy I had before their arrival, and despite my mind wandering to my ever colder food waiting for me, I tell them I will ring around hotels and find them a room elsewhere. Soon enough, they go on their way, off to spend the night at another hotel who is prepared to receive them, thanks to my warning phone call of their imminent arrival. I return to my food, now cold and tasteless, and as I wash it down with my can of Monster Pacific Punch, I curse that damn website under my breath. 2. 12:25 a.m. Legal name, local addy on the ID, came to check in to a reservation, gave me the confirmation number, under the stage name they use. He claimed it was his stage name. I let him know that he and whoever booked his reservation would need to contact the OTA and have it put into his legal name that would match his government-issued ID. Instead of calling the OTA, he called someone who said they would be on their way down. A few minutes later, a bald small female, who never gave me her name, came in, and every time I tried explaining the policy, she would rudely interrupt me and talk over me. She asked for my name, and I didn't respond. She then said, "You look like a David," and proceeded to call me David over and over again. She said that she paid online and demanded the room. I attempted to explain that to be able to check in a reservation, I would need a legal government-issued ID that matched the name on the reservation. I then attempted to give her multiple options. 1. Call OTA and change it to his legal name. 2. Call OTA and change the reservation into her name. But she just kept talking over me, while her and him were belittling me with things such as 1. Do you like your job, David? 2. Oh, you never wanted to check us in the entire time, did you, David? 3. Are you the manager? Because it would be a shame if your manager found out about you. 4. You must not like our people, huh? Insinuating racism. So, after over 30 minutes of dealing with their abuse, it was at this point I gave up and let them know that I would be refusing them service at this time for their abusive conduct. Yay! I then remembered that I had a voice recording app on my phone and began recording them in case it escalated further. The female kept demanding I call the police because they were not going to leave while proceeding to lecture me on customer service. I decided to leave, and I locked myself in the GM's office. Eventually, female called the OTA and was so loud that my recording picked up her convo from behind the locked office door. Hearing her lie to the OTA representative, I came out to let the OTA know that we were refusing service due to their abusive conduct. The lady interrupted that also by telling me not to talk over her phone. I gave up and went back into the GM's office. 1:15 a.m. They walked into the back office area to hunt me down, but I was locked inside the GM's office for safety. I could hear them from within the office taunting, "Oh, you're a big bad man hiding from a little old lady." I stayed locked in the office. They looked at the Employee of the Month plaque and saw David on there, and then started to taunt me, using the last name of the employee as if it would scare me. I didn't come out until they were outside the locked main lobby door. The male tried to re-enter a minute later, but the door was locked, then began to yell, "Your name is David Boxleitner, isn't it? I'm going to call and get you fired, David Boxleitner." Not the real last name. 1:45 a.m. Went to grab the meal I was eating prior to their arrival from the break room table, and noticed that my mashed potatoes appear to have been spit in, and then stirred. 3. So I work at the biggest hotels in my area, and while the work is sometimes hard and overwhelming, I find it enjoyable. My biggest problem right now is an engineer. He seems to have some deep-seated dislike for me. There have been several times when this man has embarrassed me in front of guests, yelling at me, belittling me, and disrespecting me. At first we were cool. I noticed a change about a month after I started working there. He randomly asked me how old I was. I told him I was 38. He got this sour look on his face and said, "You tricked me." I was confused, so I asked him what he meant. He said he thought I was much younger than that, and so he felt like I tricked him. I told him he sounded crazy and I had nothing to do with his thoughts. I brushed it off because I heard this before from men. I do look a lot younger than I actually am, but since I have no control over my genetics, I'm not out here tricking people into thinking I'm younger than I am. After this incident, he started treating me differently, walking by the desk saying little rude comments under his breath, like, "The front desk doesn't know how to use walkies," or telling my manager that the whole front desk crew except 2 of us are useless, referring to the 22-year-old and 21-year-old he spends the entire shift staring at and talking to. Mostly he is our only maintenance man in the evenings when I have to work, so I have no choice but to communicate guest needs with him. Sometimes he is cordial, but mostly my requests are met with attitude and snarky remarks. He will flat-out lie when I ask him to do something and pretend like it can't be done, only to do it months later and act like he never told me that. I have mostly ignored and brushed it off until one day, after a particularly rough experience with a very rude and out-of-line guest, he flipped out on me, yelling at me, telling me that I am the only person that has a problem with guests. Not true. Told me that nobody here likes me. Not true. Then proceeded to rattle off a list of all my wrongdoings. The time I was slapped by a guest in front of the police because she thought I called them on her, I didn't. I only walked them upstairs. She was throwing a party for minors in her room and had alcohol and a certain plant in abundance. There were about 40 underage, half-naked teenagers in the room, and several of their parents had called 911 because they had tracked their location to our hotel. Or the time an extremely intoxicated woman threw a water bottle at me because I told her if she did not pay for her parking, she would be ticketed. None of that was my fault. What I found weird was that he remembered every bad situation I had been involved in and was just waiting for the opportunity to throw that trauma in my face. This last incident was because the front doors are broken. I closed them because it was 20 degrees outside and it was freezing cold inside. Guests are complaining about the cold and I'm sitting at the desk freezing. After I closed them, I went and asked my manager if I could put up a sign asking guests to use the 2 doors to the side of them, just because those were broken. She said she was fine with that, because they had been broken for days and it was too cold. He just so happened to be in the back office when I asked her, and he asked me what door. I said the front door. He jumped up and ran to the doors and opened them. He then turned to me and started yelling, Do not touch these doors again. That's not your job. If I wanted those doors closed, I would have closed them. I just said it is freezing in here. He goes, so what? Are you an engineer? Are you an engineer? No. So just worry about the front desk. Do your job and don't worry about the doors. There were several guests in the lobby, and I look over and I see a group of men pointing at me and laughing. I was mortified. So I told him there was no reason to get that angry over a door I closed because it was freezing in here. He told me yes it was because he brought us a portable heater. Mind you, he put the heater in the back office and was sitting in it. That heat was not reaching the front where I was. It was in another room, only benefiting him. The worst part of this was the guys who were pointing and laughing decided to harass me all night. Several times they walked up to my desk and told me that I was angry, and I should be embarrassed, and he told me off, and you better not touch that door again, laughing in my face knowing that I couldn't do anything about it. It's gotten to the point where this $14 an hour just isn't worth it. I'm tired of being treated like crap by these people. I'm at my wit's end. Sorry for the long rant, but if someone can give me some advice on how I can deal with this, I would appreciate it. Edit. He just came in and spoke to everyone at the front desk but me. Literally made it a point to hug everyone and tell them a Happy New Year but me. It's like I'm not even a person. Hellfreezer's note, I am very confused as to why this pervert's been allowed to continue working at your hotel. Obviously the thing that disappoints him about you is your age. He's into really young girls. Barely legal, it sounds like. I'd make sure he's not acting inappropriately with them and keep a note of every interaction you're having. You have witnesses to the way he treated you with the door. Document everything. If he's coming up to you, have your phone nearby and discreetly start recording. I don't really care what the permissions are in your state, just do it for your own protection. And this is the important part. Report every incident and find out how he's treating the other employees. Ask those younger girls, are they comfortable with the way he hangs around? It seems like he should maybe be off doing his job rather than hanging around people at the front desk. Maybe he should be designing a ship or a new car or something since he's apparently an engineer. And that word's thrown around a little too liberally these days. Him calling himself an engineer is a bit like me calling myself a reverend just because I took some silly online thing that said I was. I'm not really. 4. I worked in hospitality in my teens and 20s. I dealt with some right cockweasels in that time. In some cases, management were supportive, but mostly it was just suck it up, buttercup, don't like it, you can leave. Just prior to Christmas, I was checking into a small motel in the middle of nowhere on my way through to a job site. I had arrived a couple of hours before check-in time and the room wasn't ready. I gave the front desk person my card and did all the admin things I needed to do so that I could go straight into the room when it was ready. Then said I'd go grab some lunch and come back at check-in time. Now it's the middle of the day in the Australian outback, and it was well over 40 degrees. The lady took pity on me and said that I was welcome to bring my lunch back and eat it in their activities room if I wanted, because the only places doing food had no air conditioning. I was grateful, so I brought back a lemonade icy pull for her. She was super excited, and thus began the Great Treat War, but that's a story for another time. As I was eating my lunch and enjoying the luxurious air conditioning, I heard raised voices from the front desk area, and I wandered out to see if everything was okay, and saw a middle-aged man in a suit yelling at my new friend. When I went closer, I saw that his suit had the logo of a well-known real estate agent. He was carrying on about how his status entitled him to an early check-in, while my new friend was trying to explain to him that this was an independent hotel that didn't have any sort of reward program, and none of the rooms were ready yet because it's still an hour until check-in time. Ooh, he was having none of that, and continued to yell, swear, and stamp around. I felt this was unacceptable, so I looked up the number for the head office of the real estate company and called them. I explained what was happening and held the phone up for them to hear how he was carrying on. His name was also on his suit jacket, just his first name, but it was enough. Let's call him Chad. Head office thanked me for bringing this to their attention. They told me they would deal with it immediately. I hung up. Chad's phone rang. He declined the first call, but the phone rang again. He answered in a very grumpy voice. I got to watch as he deflated. His tone turned from angry to worried to pleading, and his body language changed from "I am the boss, do what I say" to subservient serf waiting to be kicked by the king. While still on the phone to the other caller, he apologized profusely to the front desk lady, and to his credit, it was a proper apology. He owned his behavior and didn't make excuses, packed up his stuff, and kind of drooped all the way back to his car. I could say everybody clapped, but it was only me and the front desk lady. I mean, there should have been an audience to witness this, but given the population of this town is less than 200, even having these two people in one spot was pretty miraculous. I was pretty happy with how things turned out, so it seems with my new friend, because I got upgraded to the only room with a bathtub, and the rate for my next booking was significantly lower than I had paid before. 5. I want to preface this story with some background about the hotel I work at. We are located right next to a large plant for a major corporation, and I work for one of the big 3 hotel chains. Most of our business comes from contractors who work at that plant. There aren't a lot of buildings around our hotel other than another hotel and large fabrication plants. Occasionally, we have some homeless people wander in, but it's extremely rare, never more than once every few months, if not longer. We also don't get many check-ins because our hotel is on the smaller side, so we often have a lot of downtime. The other night we had a man walk in and set something on the table next to the sliding doors. This table holds some promotional credit card information and dog treats. I work at the bar, and there's a TV with a large case around it, as well as a fireplace that blocks my view of one of the front desks, the desk that is primarily used. This man stood there for a second, then walked past the TV into my view. He noticed me and walked toward the bar. He was wearing a nice windbreaker, had well-groomed facial hair, and showed no signs of being homeless. He asked, "Can I bother you for a cup of coffee?" Assuming he was a guest staying at the hotel, I pointed toward our coffee station and told him he could help himself. He then said, "Great, I brought my own cups to use." At this point, I realized he wasn't actually a hotel guest. I walked over to the aforementioned table, grabbed his cups, and went to the coffee station. I thought about the situation and figured I couldn't just tell him no after already telling him yes. If he was really just down on his luck, a cup of coffee or two wouldn't hurt us or him. He capped his cups and said something along the lines of, "Usually I can get a cup of ramen for $2 at the hotel next door, but only sometimes, depending on whether the girl or the guy is working. The girl always screams at me to get out, but the guy is cool about it and lets me buy the ramen. Can you do something like that?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Sorry, it's a bit pricier here than that." He thanked me and started walking outside. I went to the back office to talk to the front desk agent, explained what happened, and mentioned how it was suspicious but didn't require action. I thought that was the end of it. He then walked back in an hour later and approached my desk. My coworker went to help him. I didn't hear their full conversation, but from what I gathered and her explanation afterward, he had asked her if there was something wrong with the blankets in the dumpster and whether he could take them. At this point, we had 2 problems. We were dealing with a homeless person loitering on the property, and he was going through our trash, which posed a liability risk for the hotel. She notified our manager for follow-up the next day and tried to keep an eye out. The next day, I was again talking with the front desk associate in the back office when we saw the same man on the camera walking in. This time, instead of stopping at the desk, he walked straight to the bar and sat down. I walked over, greeted him, and acknowledged him. He mentioned how it was rainy and cold and that he had ridden his bike here from the library about a mile down the street. Then he asked if he could get another coffee from the station. I told him, unfortunately, that coffee is only for hotel guests. He mumbled something under his breath. I could barely understand him, but caught phrases like, "Are you for real?" and "I can't." I told him I was sorry, but he had to leave. He walked out, and that was the last I saw of him. I informed my coworker at the desk that if he returned, we'd probably have to call the police and have him trespassed. It sucks that he was down on his luck, and I wish I could have helped him more. However, if someone comes in more than once, especially asking for hotel property, it becomes an issue we can't ignore. Hopefully he understands and doesn't come back. Otherwise, things might get worse for him. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to COAHW, episode 164. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and do support me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description. We also have channel memberships available if you would prefer that as an option. Okay. Don't think we have any other business today, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And inspired by the last story, I'm going to ask, what is your favorite flavor of ramen? Or at least your favorite flavor of hot snack you can make with a kettle. I usually go for curry ramen or chicken if not available. Those are the two I go for most. You can get beef quite commonly around here as well, but for some reason I don't buy them. I don't know why. However, my favorite is, I think the brand is it called Yum or Yum Yum, something like that. I bought a case on a whim a few years back off Amazon because it was going really, really cheap. It was like a box of 30, and I really liked them. So the shrimp flavor in that were especially nice. So whenever I see those available, and I've occasionally seen them for sale locally, which is good, I will pick up a few of those. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And I'm really craving ramen. Now, I've actually been craving it since yesterday, so of course, although I've got plenty of food there, I don't have any ramen in the house. It's always the way, isn't it? Okay, and before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from COAHW 163. And I think this was, have you or have you not stayed in a hotel? There's Bob. Dr. Bohr, we call him Bob. His answer is, I don't know if you're alone or not. I've stayed in several hotels and a couple of resorts in my life. I've also slept in a car, semi and tent, and inside a rest area building, once sleeping on the floor. That, my friend, is because you have led what I'm sure is a very interesting and versatile life. I am actually quite sheltered when it comes to the adventures I have had. Still, I'm only 43, 44 this coming year, but that's quite a bit away. So there's still time for adventures. Many, many exciting adventures, I hope. Safe ones, to make sure I'm home and comfy in bed by the end of them. Thank you very much for your answer, Bob. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.